Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing film discussions, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Adore matchmaking.
Oh, it's been a long time since we've talked about a Jane Austen moment, and I'm really excited today.
I know. I believe we talked about Dakota Johnson's Persuasion.
We did on our Patreon, I think, a while back.
And we talked about Pride and Prejudice, of course. We talked about Autumn de Wilde's Emma adaptation.
And we even brought some of that up in our latest episode on The Ugly Stepsister pretty recently.
Yes, we did. And this film is so much fun. So we're talking about Materialists today, the latest film written and directed by Celine Song. And as a little preview of the discussion, this is basically the Jane Austen Singularity.
Yeah.
We're both deep diving into, I believe, Pride and Prejudice and Emma.
Because also a touch of Sense and Sensibility.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's all coming in here. This is a wonderful kind of smorgasbord of Jane Austen.
I'm very
excited for the discussion.
This is going to be fun. Also, side note, could she have chosen a worse word? Materialists? That is so hard to say. It's a terrible title, but it doesn't matter. Hey, short version, film great. Go see film. Very good.
Is this too crazy to say this is my film of the year?
This is like, I don't know. I mean, it's up there for sure. This movie was really good.
It was my most anticipated, and now it's my favorite. And we've seen it twice.
I was going to say, we saw it twice. We saw it about a week ago, adored it, thought about it, knew we wanted to do an episode on it, saw it again last night just to like really hammer it in. And I was so nervous I wasn't going to like it the second time. I don't know why, but I was nervous. But no, it's just as good, if not better, the second time. It's
absolutely bulletproof. So we're deep diving into books and movies and the whole Jane Austen thing. Maggie, start us off.
Yeah, right. Well, so I mean, the reason that I liked this so much, I think, is because it felt so Jane Austen to me. But it wasn't like it was doing a modern adaptation of Austen, because we've seen that time and time again, and that's fun and great.
Every other book at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, right. What if Mr. Darcy was
a TikToker?
Whoa. Yeah, like Pride and Prejudice and TikTok or whatever. But this is not that. This is an original story. It's not at all based, as far as I can tell, based on any other, pre-existing text, but it's got the feeling of Austen. And I think that's for a couple reasons. One is that it is incredibly fixated on money, class, and societal success and standing. And that is like so what Jane Austen is about. And there's like the age-old question of, do you marry for love or money, and how do those things work together? But I think the other thing that works so well here and feels so Austenian, is that a word? Can we say it? I'm going to say it. I have an English degree.
It's your podcast.
I'm going to say it. It feels so Austenian, is that all of the characters are so flawed. Like, they're so messy and flawed. And I think a lot of modern rom-coms, when I say modern, I mean late 20th and 21st century rom-coms, the ones that we're used to in the modern age, they are so afraid to make their characters flawed, or at least their female leads. They'll make the males flawed. They'll make them stupid, oblivious, selfish, arrogant, and like the arc of the movie is the girl is so great that she convinces the man to change for her, and then like
she fixes him.
Exactly. And then there's a grand gesture at the end. He's crying in the rain saying, "I'm sorry." He's declaring his love for her. There's a romantic gesture. Usually the female lead's fatal flaw is that she's clumsy or kind of awkward. And like, or is like plain.
Fatal flaw.
Right. Or she's like plain, even though it's like Kate Winslet, like the most beautiful woman who's ever lived. Right. But like, that's their flaw. Or it's like, they're poor. Like, it's never anything actually wrong with them. And so usually like the arc is just the man changing for her and them and it coming together. And usually the main conflict between these characters is not because of any like real character flaws. It's really like almost always miscommunication, which is the worst trope of all time. I cannot stand the miscommunication trope. It's annoying. It's tired. I don't believe it. I'm gonna get off. I can't get into that too much.
It just feels overly convenient.
Yes.
I understand.
And it's like, and it's not based in any real conflict that real couples actually have. It's just like, oh, someone misheard something, and then like that's the whole plot of the movie, and then they figure it out and it's fine. But I think the worst part of the miscommunication thing is that it really highlights the like a lack of trust between two characters, or like jealousy between two characters, which that of course is a flaw in itself, is two people not trusting each other, but the movie never really presents it as that.
This movie
No, other movies.
Okay.
I'm sorry, other movies, other rom-coms. I'm talking about other rom-coms right now. They like that is the problem. Is like the female lead has no flaws, and there's not really any real conflict other than miscommunication. And the arc of the movie is the male changing himself for the woman, and that's the end of the story. And that's like fine. Those things are fun to watch. It's whatever. But this movie, and I think Jane Austen as well, let all of their characters be deeply flawed and human, and that is why I think I liked this movie so much. I found a lot of similarities between lots of different Austen stories. We can get into it, but I know that you really found a lot of specific similarities with Pride and Prejudice especially. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I do. So I'm going to do the thing that I usually do for Dr. Faustus, but instead of doing my love language, I'm doing Maggie's, so I'm talking about Pride and Prejudice, and that is character mapping.
Okay.
Explicit character mapping with the big three. And for the sake of clarity, we usually use actor names. I'm going to continue to do that here. So I'm going to say Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, and Dakota Johnson.
That's great.
So the thing that broke this open for me, because I thought this was just going to be a you episode, because you were so excited about this Jane Austen thing. And then we were watching it last night, and I realized that Chris Evans is Elizabeth.
Okay, Elizabeth Bennet.
And that's where I want to start.
Okay.
Because there's a scene at the beginning of the Keira Knightley movie, which is the best adaptation of that story ever.
It is. I'll defend it till I die. Go listen to our episode about that.
The
It's
scene
great.
at the beginning, that long tracking shot through the Bennet family farm with the pig and seeing all the sisters, and that's the long tracking shot through Chris Evans's apartment.
Oh, sure. His like very messy, like real down to earth home.
Yes, they're equally chaotic and humble. And that's where it clicked in for me.
Nice.
So I want to chase that thread a little bit, because it's not just the tracking shot. It's also that of any character in this film, he is the poor one.
Right.
He is the idealistic one. He's principled. He's uncompromising. And like Elizabeth Bennet, he's outspoken. Even in rooms where the societal norms would dictate that he's just quiet.
I see.
In the same way that he's the waiter. That reminded me of the scene where Elizabeth has to play the pianoforte for Judi Dench.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I thought that was an interesting play on that.
Okay.
Because she's kind of functioning like... They're treating her like a waiter when
see.
she's in that room. Like she doesn't belong at all. So if we're saying that Chris Evans is Elizabeth, I'm also going to say that Dakota Johnson is Darcy.
Okay. Yeah.
Her whole initial view of the world, talking about the math of each relationship, the strict class structure and social mores, the whole concept of appropriate matches, that's very much in the Darcy wheelhouse. And this character is literally upholding and monetizing that system,
Yeah.
that class structure. She's
Yeah.
benefiting from it. She's reinforcing it. That's her entire income. That's her world. So then the question is, if you have Chris Evans as Elizabeth and Dakota Johnson as Darcy, then who the hell is Pedro Pascal?
Yeah, where does he fit in? He's not really Mr. Wickham. You know, it's not that.
No.
It's not as simple as that.
And again, this was answered for me by watching the film again.
Okay.
Because the whole revelation they have in the kitchen where they're talking about the leg surgery and they break up, the problem that they both put their finger on in that scene is that he and Dakota Johnson are just too similar.
Yeah.
They've both had these quote-unquote investment surgeries in themselves.
Yep.
They both want to do business with each other. They speak the same language. They kind of view the world the same cynical, capitalistic way.
Yeah.
And they're not in love with each other.
Right.
That sort of how simpatico those two characters are, I'm comfortable calling Pedro Pascal just a second Darcy.
Oh, okay.
He's just another Mr. Darcy.
And maybe he's like a Darcy who doesn't change, like a Darcy who doesn't
Yeah.
improve or grow.
Or he's more slow to grow.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
even more Darcy than she is. Basically, she's trying on that identity.
I see.
Because we know from the backstory we get in the film that she used to be an actor, just like Chris Evans. She used to be more poor, like Chris Evans. And now she's trying to jump the fence and play the other side. And now she's kind of posturing as a Darcy. But comparatively, he's actually living that life.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
And he's like, and is more true to Darcy in that he is like old money. He's like
Yeah.
born into his wealth. That's like all he's ever known. Yeah.
Private equity. That's
Yeah.
the perfect metaphor for Darcy's wealth.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm more taken by this because I do think Celine Song is doing something by having this second Darcy. The contrast between her two Darcy characters, I think, is quite revealing, mostly around the leg surgery subtext. Because that sort of reveals him. If I was just saying that Dakota Johnson is kind of playing the role of Mr. Darcy, but Pedro Pascal is a more true Darcy, the revelation about the leg surgery is that he's playing a role too.
That's true.
And
yeah.
he's trying to fit this archetype or this mold. And I think part of the thesis of the film is that there are no true Darcys. That it's all just posturing. It's only ever been a role, even in Pride and Prejudice. Because if you look at the Darcy we meet, I'm talking about the Keira Knightley film again.
Sure.
If you look at the Darcy we meet at the beginning of that film, he's aloof, he's detached, he's superior, he's mysterious. But it's all bullshit. It's all an act. That's not who he really is. When we see him, when he trusts Elizabeth at the very end of the film, he's not like that at all.
Right.
And I like that the film kind of rolls back and unfolds those layers of who Mr. Darcy is versus who he pretends to be. I like that in a film all about modern materialism, we also get to peel back that particular bit of performativity.
That makes sense. Yeah, that performance, I think, is so essential in the world of Regency England and high society. But I think it's also, so relevant here in the modern day as well. I do like that because if you expand beyond Pride and Prejudice, you think about like Sense and Sensibility, for example. Eleanor's character is so restrained and held back, and she is performing. She's afraid to show her true feelings, and we see Marianne as the opposite of that, and she is very she's overly she shows her feelings too much and she's overly open, and that gets her into a lot of trouble too. And you think about Pride and Prejudice, some of Lizzie's sisters are also way too open, and they're not performing in the correct way, and that gets them in trouble too. So this idea of performance is essential, I think, in both of these worlds.
I'm glad you brought up the sisters, because that's where I was headed next.
Oh, okay.
Because to go back to Dakota Johnson for a second as a version of Mr. Darcy, I think it's really interesting that she's the one who saves the day when there's a friend/intimate family member relation who's in trouble. And this is kind of a tertiary bit of character mapping I want to do. Do you think it works to compare Sophie L. and Lydia?
I think so, because if I think about other modern adaptations of Austen and of Pride and Prejudice, I think the equivalent, obviously what happens with Lydia, what happens with Sophie here are not the same things. Certainly.
I think they are.
But I think societally and the way we think about it, they're very, very similar.
No, but Lydia's 15 in the book.
And Wickham is evil.
Yes. So I think this film, in translating Lydia Bennet to Sophie L., which is what she's called in the film, I think this, if we're calling this kind of a weird, loose adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, I think it's maybe the first adaptation that acknowledges the assault element of the Lydia-Wickham relationship.
Sure, yeah.
Because she's 15 and spirited away by this psycho loser.
Well, and what's interesting too is that if you think about Darcy's role in the Wickham-Lydia story, it works in both of these, because in Pride and Prejudice, Darcy knows that this is who Wickham is and what he's capable of, and he doesn't reveal that to anybody beforehand, and then he of course feels guilty when it happens because he should have said something sooner. Compared to here in Materialists, Dakota Johnson's character feels, of course, responsible for what happens to Sophie because she set her up with Mark. And so they both have this element of, I feel responsible for this. I should have known better. I should have done something. And then they have to try to atone for it afterwards. That's a great comparison.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that talked about anywhere, but I just want to see what you made of that.
Yeah, I will say the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is a great modern adaptation of P&P. It's like a YouTube series, but it's a professionally scripted thing, but it appears not so. The way, I won't get into it, but the way they handle the Lydia thing, it's not quite an assault plot point, but it is like a big time intimate betrayal, and I think they handle it pretty well over there too.
She's 15.
Yeah, she's 15.
It's not that complicated.
I know, it's horrific, but yeah.
To go back to Dakota Johnson and kind of complete this, tie this into a bow.
Yeah,
I trip on my idioms sometimes.
Too many.
If Dakota Johnson is our Darcy, and after Pedro Pascal kind of moonwalks out of the film, and we're left with one Elizabeth, Chris Evans, and one Darcy, Dakota Johnson, I loved the final scene where she gets the call from the matchmaker boss saying that she's transferring offices and that Dakota Johnson is going to get the job offer to become the head of this matchmaking agency, and that she can ask for as much money as she wants. I think that is kind of completing that arc of Dakota Johnson becoming kind of an enlightened Mr. Darcy, which is how Mr. Darcy's arc ends in Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
He becomes the enlightened Mr. Darcy.
Right.
where she's settling down with her true love from a lower tax bracket, and by doing so, kind of learning the true meaning of Christmas.
Sure, yeah.
She's enlightened by the end of the film, but also because she's now the one with the fortune, basically, I think she's settled into that Darcy role.
I see. Yeah. And both she and Darcy, I think, her less explicitly, but they both sort of learn to use their wealth for good. So Darcy, of course, uses his money to help rescue Lydia out of, as best as he can in that time period, out of her situation and that sort of thing. And, and I'm sure he'll ensure that Lizzie's sisters don't, die in poverty. And then, of course, here you get the sense that now, because Dakota Johnson's character is in a better state financially than Chris Evans's character, both of them are going to be okay.
Yes.
Not that she's going to like fully support him, but you get the sense that she could, exactly. And they're going to work together and they're going to make it work and it's going to be great.
And that's my framing. That's my character mapping that I think Celine Song is doing here for Pride and Prejudice. We're gender swapping the Elizabeth Darcy dynamic and we're throwing in a second Darcy for good measure and contrast. But ultimately we arrive at the same place that the Jane Austen book does. We get some life lessons along the way, and it ends up with two characters sitting crisscross applesauce in love with each other. But we're doing like a modern navigation of class conflicts and economic motivations, engaging with the same question of what is love? Is it possible in this strange, brave new world? I loved how faithful and innovative this felt in engaging with Pride and Prejudice. It's exactly the same sort of satisfaction that I got when we talked about Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme, where I called that the most faithful and innovative Faustus adaptation. We're hitting a beautiful point with these kind of pseudo adaptations.
I know, it's wonderful. And I think we should say, like, I don't know if this means that Celine Song had these characters or ideas in mind. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but that's not the point. The point is that it's interesting that these ideas can translate and continue across the centuries, and like these are the types of stories that we tend to love and gravitate
They're
towards.
Archetypes.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, like I said earlier, or hinted at earlier, this does go beyond Pride and Prejudice. I love your character mapping. I think that's so interesting, and I'm so down for it. I so believe it. But I think what's so cool is that you can sort of not directly character map on other Austen stories, but just think about the flaws of these characters as a whole. Because like I said earlier, her one of the things she does best is her characters. She writes them as real living people who are all flawed. Not only are they flawed, it feels like the point of each story is that these characters are flawed, and it's them sort of like coming to terms with that and figuring out how to be better people. Not that by the end they're all perfect angels, but like the point of the story is sort of like seeing flaws in others, seeing them in yourself, having like a come to Jesus reckoning moment, and then sort of becoming better for it. And like that's sort of what a lot of these stories center around. I'm not going to talk about all 5 novels, but I think Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and even and Emma, I think are kind of the best options here. Also, I just don't know the other books as well. I mean, I've read them all, but I don't remember or know them as well, but it doesn't matter. But so, I mean, you've talked about Pride and Prejudice at length, so I won't get into it, but both Lizzie and Darcy are flawed. I think we often simplify and think about Lizzie as perfect and Darcy is the flawed one who has to change for her.
Because of Keira Knightley.
Well, right. And that's not really what happens. Like Lizzie, especially book Lizzie, she's pretty messy. She's very stubborn. She is incredibly prejudiced against Darcy for his wealth. She assumes he's stuck up. She clings onto her first impression of him and won't let it go. She assumes that he thinks that he's better than her. And she also kind of thinks she's better than him in a different way because she's not as wealthy. She's not as high and mighty, so she's better. And she kind of laughs at him. And she refuses to see the good in him. And she sort of like has a really clear, like, she sees the world the way she wants to see it, and she doesn't really accept new information very well.
She's young.
Right. yeah. And she's stubborn and headstrong, which is like, these are great qualities, but they also are flaws, right? And then of course Darcy's got all of his problems, he's just, all around stuck up, can't see past his own assumptions and his own prejudices about Jane and Lizzie and their family, and is pretty snobbish about it. And like his first proposal to Lizzie is devastating. Like he does, you can tell he loves her, but he does it in this awful way. He's like, I fought against my better judgment because of how awful your family is. And it's like, excuse me, sir. Anyway, so the arc of this story isn't one of them like changing for the other one. It's like both of them pointing out each other's flaws and them both seeing their own flaws within themselves and working on those and growing and becoming better people and their relationship working for that. And like it's that's why that story is like so good. And I think, kind of like you've pointed out, a lot of that is present here in Materialists as well. If you think about a different Jane Austen story, Sense and Sensibility, I kind of hinted at this before. All of our characters have flaws here. So you got 4 people. You've got the 2 sisters and the 2 male leads. There are other characters as well, but just to simplify things. Eleanor, like I said, is too withdrawn, holds back, and it means that she's never emotionally regulated. And it also means that her relationship with Edward, who is played by Hugh Grant in the film, she doesn't like let him know that she loves him, and so therefore he doesn't know to make a move, and so like there's that whole problem.
Does that count as miscommunication?
A little bit, but like it's like that's their character flaws that they don't communicate. It's not just one mishears the other. It's better than that. Marianne, of course, is too forward with her feelings, and that gets her in trouble, and it also means she's selfish in regards to her sister. Edward's flaw is that he's also too withdrawn, and also he's being really unfair to Eleanor when they first meet, because he does not reveal that he's already engaged to Lucy Steele, and so he's like flirting with her and forming this relationship with her and doesn't tell her, hey, by the way, I'm engaged. That's bad on his part.
Is Lucy Steele related to Anastasia Steele?
Actually, yes, canonically, yes.
Miss Steele?
Miss Steele. This is where we get into the 50 Shades of Grey comparisons. No, but with Dakota Johnson here in the playing field, we kind of should, right? And then, of course, Colonel Brandon's flaw, who's played by Alan Rickman. His main flaw is that he's 35 dating a 17-year-old, but we won't get into it.
That's quite a flaw.
Right. But so, and the whole, like, conceit of the story is them meditating on these different ways of being, these different personality traits, and the problems they cause, and how can they kind of meet in the middle and maybe not express our feelings so much, Marianne, but also Eleanor, be honest with yourself and others just a little bit and open up and have relationships. And so that's kind of the arc of that story. So again, the arc is not anybody changing for the other, but it's more the characters addressing their flaws and trying to be better for it. If you look at Emma, I mean, the title of the book is Emma, which implies that, like, because you think about Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, there it's like, okay, we're going to meditate on these character flaws, on these ideas, these things that plague us.
It's an ensemble that serves those concepts.
Right. And for Emma, it's like, Emma is the flaw. Let's talk about that. And I love that. Emma is super flawed. She is stuck up, selfish, classist, vain, manipulative, is just like, is like that girl, right? And so, of course, like, and like, that's so fun as her being our main heroine. I mean, she's the most flawed heroine, I think, of all of Jane Austen's, and that's like so fun to engage with. Harriet is, of course, flawed too, and that's Mia Goth's character in the Autumn to Wild film. She is naive, has no confidence in herself, just lets herself be, strung along by Emma in whichever direction Emma chooses. So both of them are kind of in this toxic friendship. Mr. Knightley is honestly, I think, the least flawed of all of our like male leads. He's pretty perfect and great. I think his biggest flaw is that he's a little jealous of Frank Churchill and is sometimes an asshole for it. But on the whole, he like just calls Emma out on her stuff. But the focus, I think, in the story is on Emma and Harriet's flaws compared to Mr. Knightley. But again, the arc of the story is the characters address each other's flaws and address them within themselves, and they try to be better for it.
I had a little bit on Emma as well, to kind of tie it back to Materialists.
Yeah, sure.
Because I was looking at this film as kind of a bridge, for me at least, because I don't know as much about Sense and Sensibility, but I saw a lot of Pride and Prejudice and a lot of Emma in this. Basically, the premise of a woman who's a little bit naive and a little bit oblivious, who's a matchmaker, being eventually humbled by real life and other people's real problems, only to end up with a guy who's an old friend who she's known forever. That perfectly maps on Emma and Materialists.
Yes, you're so right.
And as an aside, if this is kind of a combo, then Dakota Johnson has now done Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Persuasion.
Yeah, I didn't get into Persuasion here, just because again, I'm less familiar with that story. I don't remember it as well, and I think what's going on over there is a little bit different than what's going on here. It's just a different kind of story, but it's equally great. But so yeah, I like that. And so if you've got these kind of 3 like Jane Austen pillars about like characters having flaws, addressing them, and trying to be better for it, that's what's happening here too, right? All of these characters are deeply flawed. John is the least flawed, I think.
Chris Evans.
Yes, Chris Evans. He's jealous. He says it himself. He gets angry about little things. He gets upset easily, right? He maybe doesn't know how to like just take shit and deal with it. He just kind of lets stuff fester within him. And he also is stubborn and doesn't stand up for himself. He kind of like lets people walk over him a little bit. He is outspoken, but he also like, I mean, maybe this isn't fair, but he lets Dakota Johnson's character use him over and over again. We get this hint towards the end that this is not the first time she has booty called him.
It's such a good monologue.
I know, it's beautiful.
He has all the best scenes in the movie. He's incredible in this film.
He's so good. I take everything back I said about him in our Captain America Patreon episode. Oh my God. But no, he's so good. But he doesn't stand up for himself. He needs to be a little bit more like, I don't know, just take care of yourself better, buddy. And then Harry, of course, is insecure, materialistic, works in private equity. Like, there's your biggest flaw right
Pedro
there.
Pascal.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal. Yeah, Harry. Sorry. Yeah, Pedro Pascal. So that's kind of his thing. And
that's
then
his flaw.
That's his flaw. And then, of course, Lucy, Dakota Johnson's character, she's also materialistic. She's judgmental. She's selfish. She is self-hating. Like, there's so many moments where she like points out her own flaws and talks about how much she hates herself, which is
the
like
shitty trade-offs she mentioned.
Yes, right. And so all these characters are deeply flawed. And again, the arc of the story is them trying to sort through those things and figure out which flaws can we work on, which can we live with, which are our non-negotiables. Like, it's all about addressing that. And just like all of our other Austen stories, all of this character flaw work is done, against the backdrop of money, class, and societal expectations. I think that's what really carries it over the top. It's not just these fun, flawed, human being characters, but it's also, we're all fixating on these like 3 tiers and pillars of society and just of human existence.
And marriage.
Exactly, yeah. And what's cool is that I feel like Austen stories are so fun because they are so much about their specific time and place. They are about Regency England. If you don't have a like strong or at least like foundational understanding of society and class expectations at that time, it's hard for you to really get a grip on Austen stories. Like, you really have to understand the society they're in. But even still, the way that the characters and the story, I think, address and work through those things feels so timeless. And I think that's why those stories continue to be adapted and enjoyed by us now. And in the same way, I think Materialists is very much about 2020's New York City. Like, it's very cemented in that time and place, and yet it feels so universal at the same time. And I think that's why it fits so wonderfully and cleanly into like the Austen canon. I feel like each of these characters in Materialists would work beautifully in an Austen story, and vice versa. I could see an Emma coming into Materialists, and I could see, Lucy fitting into Sense and Sensibility. Like, I think it all works back and forth, and I think that's what's one of the reasons why I really, really enjoyed this movie, is because it felt so like it belongs in that canon of fantastic stories about love and marriage and money.
It's evergreen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Despite, one reference to TikTok, I agree. I think this will stand the test of time. Yeah. And to roll it back to what we talked about at the beginning with rom-coms, I think we were kind of struggling with how to classify this film.
Yeah.
Overall, I think it's more of a romance because it's got more dramatic elements, more serious elements than most rom-coms, but it's also wonderfly funny throughout.
Well, and that's kind of what Jane Austen stories feel like. I feel like it's really reductive to call a Jane Austen story a rom-com. So it's like, yeah, this
like the term chick flick. It's reductive.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a rom-com in the same way that Pride and Prejudice is, in that it's a beautiful romance about serious things, but it also is so funny.
I think that's the point of the conversation in the bar with the miscommunication with the girl shit line.
Yeah.
I think that is one of those tags that is used to dismiss this kind of film.
Yes.
Where the way you're setting it up, it is absolutely an eternal, universal film where everyone can relate to this. Mm-hmm. You could tell just by the way people were moving and shuffling and making little noises in the theater. Everyone had something to say about this movie.
Yes.
Everyone related to it.
Absolutely.
And that's not always necessary in art, but I think
Right.
in films like this, it's absolutely a virtue.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I loved that scene because she says, you know, this dating is serious. Like it's incredibly serious. And it's like, yeah, so are like any story about love or marriage is very serious. I think it is so reductive to just be like, oh, that's a chick flick. Like,
And at the
no.
wedding, she talks about how your partner affects and decides the rest of your life, your
know.
choice of a partner.
And I love that scene too because what she's saying is so real and true, but you know that she doesn't believe it when she's saying it because that's early in the story before she's sort of, I don't know, become a little bit more enlightened. She's very like cynical at that time and you know she doesn't believe what she's touting, but she like pretends to be believing it. So it's like the acting on Dakota Johnson's part is so good because she's saying it in this way that feels so fake, but it also is so true. And then like the movie is her sort of learning that all is very true. It's so
It's
wonderful.
funny because you and I elevate things like Jane Austen novels to be kind of the height of art, the height of our interpersonal canon. But this also exists as a rom-com. And as much as I'm thinking about Jane Austen, I'm thinking about Nora Ephron.
Right.
And I think this film works alongside both of those things in their respective fields.
Right.
This being shot in New York on 35 millimeter, just like Past Lives was. And I really loved Past Lives, but I think
great.
this is such a step up. I think the characters feel so much more complicated. They feel so much more fully rendered. The flaws that you're talking about, the complexity there, I found so much more to chew on here than I even did in Past Lives.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by this film. As much as I enjoy thinking about it and talking about it and watching it, it's just fantastic. I want it to be talked about with the same reverence that Past Lives was. I want this to be an Oscar movie at the end of the year.
Me too.
The writing, the directing, and all three central performances, I think it's career best work.
Yeah, it's pretty up there. And I think just like the best Jane Austen stories and moments, this movie made me cry so much both times seeing it. Like, I don't know. I think I've said it can be hard to make me cry in a movie, but this one really, really does it. And again, it's because of these gorgeous characters.
I don't think I've ever rooted harder for a fictional character
No.
than I did for Chris Evans.
Oh my God. I mean, but it's like, and Dakota Johnson too.
Oh,
That's
sure,
the thing.
sure.
Like
But,
both
between-
of those characters are so, so good.
In that competition with the love triangle, I was so on Chris Evans'
Yeah,
side.
well, of
That's
course.
what I meant.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, even the humor in this movie is written in Jane Austen's style where it's like very dry and like
Sharp.
it's funny without telling you that it's funny. Like the funniest things are the ridiculous things that people say. Like that's when Austen is at her best. Like she doesn't have to make a joke because the character is the joke, and that's what this movie does too.
It's the comedy of manners element.
Uh-huh.
And the film looks so good. Not just the film grain that we talked about
Right.
before, but those lights in the backyard
Oh my
at the end
gosh.
of the film,
It's
the
shot
clothing.
beautifully. There's so many beautiful, beautiful scenes and like so many long takes and so many like just the way that the characters are framed, and she's doing so much storytelling throughout the movie, and it's really
The
impressive.
clothes, the hair, the
Ugh.
apartments, all of it. It's just, it's so sumptuous. It's an incredible movie.
Yeah, I'm so glad we saw it twice. I'm so glad it lived up and exceeded our expectations.
Me too.
And I can't wait to watch it again.
We love Dakota Johnson here at Second Breakfast.
We do.
We did an episode on it was called What is Bad Art?
Oh yeah, I was like, where are you going? Okay,
and that,
yeah,
that was my spirited. Sorry, I was just resetting the hard drive there.
things were clicking in.
That was my spirited defense of 50 Shades Darker.
Yeah.
But I will also add, we are such Dakota Johnson fans. We also did a Persuasion episode over on Patreon, and we didn't do an episode on it, but we did see Madam Web in the theater
We did.
because we support the artist.
Her web connects them all. It was so much fun. Well, let us know what you thought of Materialists. What do you think of this as, belonging in the Jane Austen canon? Do you have other films or, shows that are in this sort of vein where they feel Austenian, but they're not technically? I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're on YouTube, of course, you can just comment down below. Otherwise, if you're just listening on a podcast platform, you can get in touch with us via email or Instagram, or Second Breakfast Pod on Instagram, and then secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com. We really love hearing your thoughts and feelings and ideas. This has been so much fun. We also, by the way, we're in the middle of Summerween, so this episode's coming out on a Friday, I believe. But right now, during the summer, on Tuesdays and sometimes Fridays, we are dropping episodes on horror, because we also really love horror movies. We contain multitudes over here. It's Summerween, meaning we are trying to celebrate Halloween and autumn while we are trapped in the hellscape that is summer in Austin, Texas. We also have a Patreon, as we've been hinting at. Our Patreon is $2 a month. You can support the show by joining us over there. We drop at least 2 bonus episodes a month, sometimes more. By joining that Patreon, you can see those and, of course, access the back catalog of all the previous bonus episodes. Also, it'll just make us like you more.
And like you said, we did do that Captain America roundup.
We did.
We talk about Sebastian Stan and Chris Evans at length.
At length, if you know what I mean. It was fun. And then also, if you want to support the show in a different way, check out Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. Ridley Scott's Alien meets Monty Python.
Friday the 13th meets Flubber.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, it is so much fun. You can read it as a regular book, or you can listen to the fully produced audio drama. Both of those are in the link, or the link to both of those is in the description of this episode. Sorry, I've ran out of words. We've been doing this 35 minutes. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you here in just a few days with another brand new episode.